If you're wondering what the heck this is, then stay tuned. So actually it's not that complicated. It's a non-working vertical antenna built by my own. Not super proud of it because it's not working. But just wanted to give a quick summary of the potential failure points here because I think I need to go back a step or maybe two and completely redesign it. Let me know if you have any missing issues, mistakes. Post it in the comments. Let me know. I'd like to really make this a working antenna. But let me just start. So, this is actually the second iteration already. The whole box was meant to be on the ground while the post here was then in a vertical direction next to it. So this was not working, and I think one of the reasons was because the connection to the actual antenna, to the feed point, so to speak, was too long, about like 40-50 centimeters. So maybe that was causing some issues. That would be failure point one. So this is why I actually mounted the box to the whole post. Let me just show it in the entire length. And then we can just quickly go through. You have the standard SOPL plug here, and my idea was to separate signal and shield right from the start here. And apologies for the soldering. I'm still not really good at soldering, but that should not be the issue. It's there's an electrical connection throughout the whole antenna. That's not the issue. And then, actually it was meant to be for the 80-meter band, right? So we have the telescopic element here, and that's about 5 meters in total length. So you might wonder, okay, 5 meter and 80 meter, that's quite some difference, right? So that's why we need the huge coil here. And the idea was to separate shield and signal right from the start here, send the signal through the coil. It's a rather big coil. I don't know the exact number on top of my head, but it's about like 70 windings or so. And then there's this clamp, you can't see it. I cut a hole in there, so the idea was that I could still tune which winding to take here, but it turned out when I measured through that it should actually be that one, but that what might be failure point two. That the whole coil is not really properly working. I did measure as far as I can, and it should be working, but that's still a big question mark. So failure point one was like separating, or maybe even failure point one was having the box on the ground and then the 40-50 centimeters towards the feeding point. Failure point two might be separating shield and signal line here right from the start, although because normally or in many commercially available antennas it's done at the feeding point, so that's also sort of a question mark on my end. But then the third mistake or failure point might be the coil itself. Not sure it's properly working. And then the signal line is just passed through to the black banana socket, and from the coil we're going to the red one. Again, I significantly shortened the line from the coil to the feed point of the antenna in a way to remove one of these failure points, but it's still not properly working. The SWR is just crazy. And then, so the initial idea why I was trying to build it that way was because I didn't want to isolate the feed point from the pole, because this is built on wood, but it's as many things, it's just a prototype that I built. I had the idea of iterating and then putting it on a metal, more solid thing, where you would have to isolate, but that way you should circumvent that. I don't know, it didn't really work. But then the last failure point is actually that little piece here, because I don't have a lot of trust in that M10 winding here to hold the whole antenna when it's completely pulled out. So I drilled another hole in here to sort of make that connection a bit more stable, and it is super stable. But then again, it's not 100% fit, so there's some space in between, and then, as you know, the wind and whatever, it might be some connection here and then another one connection on the other side, and it's probably not ideal. So far to all the failures and mistakes here, I'm gonna completely redo this, and if you stayed with me, thanks for that. I'll just run you through the next iteration. Let's see. So what I will do as my next iteration of this one is I will actually reuse these metal parts that hold the antenna. I will isolate the antenna on the upper part so that there's no electrical connection there anymore. That should be possible through a shrink tube. But then I will actually mount it on a more final, more robust metal part. But then I need to isolate it, so I'm gonna use one of these M10 isolators that you can buy on the internet. And that should still result in a rather stable antenna, but it's gonna be isolated. It's gonna be isolated at the feed point here. It's actually not, that's in the focus. But it's also gonna be isolated on the upper part where it's actually just meant to be holding the telescope through the shrink tube. And then also I'm gonna go back a step and not include the coil, just to see. Let's build a basic one for 10 and 15 meters. Let's see if that works, and if that does, then we can get the coil back into the play, into the game, whatever. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm curious myself if it's gonna work. Maybe I missed anything else, let me know. But I think it should work in a more basic 10-15 meter way without the coil, completely mounted to the metal parts, isolated at feed point and above. So let's see if I'm right on that one. Okay, so I didn't have a shrink tube that's large enough, so in this version, gaffer tape will have to do. Quick reminder, you're watching a channel of prototyping, right? I'm gonna build fast, I'll fail fast, and then I'll iterate. So if that works the way it's supposed to be working, I'll replace that with a bit more solid isolation. So that's the fixation, if you will, higher up, and then here's the isolator and another metal part, and then it's actually that works. It's already attached here. So I'll mount that on the metal part here, and then I'm gonna solder, actually in that case, that cable. I'll shorten again to make sure the line is as short as possible. I'll get another one of these in there somehow, and then I'm gonna solder these, and that should basically be it, right? You can attach it at the top. Let's go up here, and then you can just put that into the ground. That should be solid enough, and have the antenna go up there. So let's see. Okay, so this is what we have so far. I did realize that this is by far not long enough as a standalone stand whatever into the ground, so I'll have to think about that. But that's another thing to solve on another day. We have the PLSO thing here. It was quite a bit hard to drill a hole in there. I'm not really equipped to work with iron and metal, so I think you know by now that I'd prefer to work with wood, but that's how far we are so far. Here's the isolated antenna, and then I have this one isolated as well. It's very stable connection here, so I'm not worried at all about yeah, how stable it is. That's gonna hold probably even a storm, and at least if the connection to the ground is done properly. So yeah, next thing, solder this one here, and then I'm gonna test. Okay, so we have everything connected now, and what you can see is that from the signal line there's a connection to the antenna, but from the shield there is not. So it means it's really isolated, it's all good. Of course there's a connection to the other metal parts, but that's expected, that's okay. But really only the signal line goes through to the antenna, and the outer does not. So it means it's isolated, it's working as expected, ready for testing. The antenna's in the garden. I'm not gonna leave it there, it's just for testing purposes. And I'm currently doing FT8 on my iPhone, and the transmitter will kick in a second. You see the SWR here on the ISO 991A is quite below 1.5, which is pretty good, pretty solid value already. And I didn't really tinker and tune, I just pulled the telescope stuff out for about 2.65 meters, put one radial in there, and it just worked out of the box, so that's a pretty good sign. The antenna works. Yeah, let's see what it does on 50 meters. I'm gonna pull it out a bit more and see. Okay, and we are on the 50 meter band, again FT8 on my iPhone for testing purposes. Conditions really aren't good today, especially on 10 meters. On 50 meters it should be a bit better, let's see. But the more important part here is I just extended the telescopic radiator thing to about 3.6 meters. All just baseline calculations, no tinkering, no tuning. Now transmit kicks in, you see tuner is off, of course. And again, the SWR is nicely below 1.5. I doubt I'd actually even would care about lowering it at this point. It's just pretty solid already again. So the antenna works. It's pretty solid. I'm really happy with that. I'll try for a couple more minutes to see if there is any QSOs kicking in, but again, that's not the main purpose today. I just really wanted to see if the antenna works, and it does on 10 and 50 meters, which is super great. I'll just now have to see how I can make it a bit more weatherproof and ruggedized potentially. But all in all, this is a pretty good result. It's always great to sort of finalize projects that way. And then next step will be to bring in the coil again and see if I can make it work on 80 meters. It's gonna be a fun project as well. Well, thanks for watching all the way. It's been a long one. But thanks for following along my journey to my vertical 10-15, potentially 80 meter antenna. 73 from Delta Oscar 7, Delta Tango Lima.